Hello, friends. Welcome to Spike Week. We are back for week 3, going game by game by game, breaking down the DFS slate, maybe some start-sit decisions from within there, everything for all 16 games of the week 3 NFL slate. We're going to dive into it and see where our DFS gold mines are, maybe where some sneaky start-sits are, and maybe where there's a couple props or sports bets we can capitalize on along the way. Let's do it. All right, week 2 in the books. We are on to week 3. A quick recap of week 2 as a whole. My week 2. If you do want to go watch and learn about kind of what happened in every single game of the week 2 slate, I'm going to try to record those and post those as videos and, of course, podcasts on the podcast feed here at Spike Week because, as you guys know, I can be a little wordy and I enjoy chatting with you guys in the chat, but trying to get to all the relevant news and notes from every single game of a football season is certainly not the simplest task for me to do in a short period of time. So I'm going to try to record those, get those posted. Ideally, we'll have those posted on Tuesdays, but sometimes Monday Night Football has late games and we can't cover it all. That got posted yesterday. So if you want to see what happened in every single week 2 game that maybe we can take away for week 3, I'm notably wearing a Vince Carter It's Over t-shirt, and there's a couple of guys that might come up today that I think you can just call it over for. Cough, Xavier Legette, cough, Pop Douglas. Might be over for some of those guys. Might be over for a few more that we'll get to. But moving forward, that'll be the plan. The Survivor show with myself and Rob is also already out here on the channel. We're going to try to get that out sometime, probably on Wednesdays, if not Tuesday nights moving forward, so that you can make your Survivor decisions before Thursday night football. Those are up. But in terms of this kind of game by game blueprint for how we're going to process the slate, we're going to keep that live because it's a lot of fun. I can answer any questions. We can talk through any specific plays that you guys are interested in. Like I said, start sit decisions, any bets you might be interested in making. We can talk about that as we go game by game throughout the slate. From my week 2 was one of the more fulfilling and promising weeks. That was also the most frustrating week I can remember having in a long time. I think if you watched last week in leading up to week 2, everyone here was talking a ton about sort of bounce backs and not buying absolutely everything, either not buying some things that maybe happened in week 1 that our opponents might be buying, or the inverse of if something happened and the field is really not gravitating towards it, then that's something maybe that we should pounce on, right? Manipulating our opponents based on that 1 week sample size. And one of the big things that we were pushing for was, especially after what we saw the Green Bay Packers do to the Washington Commanders after dominating the Detroit Lions in week 1, the Detroit Lions bounce back in week 2 was one of the more sort of inevitable things it felt last week. And naturally that came to fruition, and my stupid ass screwed up those DFS teams. Didn't nail the surrounding pieces to a Goff, Amon-Ra, JMO plus Rome Odunze stack. We screwed that up. Shout out to Breece Hall for a disastrous week with the New York Jets. What a disaster from the Jets. But we're going to see if we can't get back on that horse this week. Shout out to Jonathan Taylor. Shout out to Drake May actually having a good game against the Dolphins. We'll talk about that game shortly. It's a doozy of a week 3 slate, but I do think there's some things that we can take away from week 2 here tonight. Let's go ahead and get into tonight's game, shall we? Thursday night football, nothing super duper crazy for me from a betting perspective or a fantasy perspective. Something that I think is notable, of course, is that the Bills are monster favorites here, as you see on your screen. 12.5 point favorites, the Buffalo Bills. Wow. tough scenes for Miami. I'm starting to wonder when Mike McDaniel is just going to get fired. I think they really needed to get that game last night, but 12.5 point favorites, 49.5 total, though the Bills are expected to score a ton of points. We did, however, see last week the fear here from a game script perspective is what happened last week for the Buffalo Bills. James Cook scores early, gets them out to a big lead. The Dolphins cannot punch back in this game, and I'm still up in the air on what I think about the Dolphins from a punch back perspective. They did it against the Patriots. The Bills defense looked horrible against the Ravens, but then the Bills defense really bounced back and played well against the Jets. So I'm not writing off the Bills defense yet at all. This is a short week, a divisional matchup. The Bills have played this gimmick bullshit Mike McDaniel offense several times, and I'm pretty concerned, as Charisma says. I think it's possible, obviously he's not actually going to get fired at halftime, but I think we're getting in close proximity to the Mike McDaniel end of the line here. I don't know when that's going to be, but I don't imagine getting blown out tonight by the Buffalo Bills is going to help or prolong Mike McDaniel's tenure as the Dolphins head coach. What I will say is I talked yesterday on the video that was posted yesterday. Devon Achane is one of the league's biggest workhorses. So he is clearly someone that is a priority in this game from a showdown perspective. You're obviously starting him if you have him in your home leagues. I do fear what happens to Devon Achane after Mike McDaniel gets fired. I don't imagine they'll be able to really change too much. But does the new coaching staff want to get some more Ollie Gordon and not play Achane basically every single snap? I think that's a little bit of a fear. Jalen Waddle is questionable to play last night. They're hopeful, I believe was a phrasing that they used, that he will play tonight. I'm not sure that matters. Jalen Waddle has been bad, right? He did catch a touchdown, but we haven't seen anything super special from Jalen Waddle. I actually don't know what Jalen Waddle's like. Let's take a quick look at that. I shared the wrong. Let's share this so you guys can take a look. Let's look at the receiving game from the Dolphins. So obviously we have Tyreek, Achane. Okay, let's look at an efficiency perspective. So 1.8 yards per route run through 2 games for Jalen Waddle. Not much yards after the catch for him or Tyreek. That is pretty concerning. Tyreek has actually been a lot better than one might expect. He did catch a 47-yard pass last game that Tua, I don't know if you saw that one. Tua lobbed up so Tyreek caught a 47-yard pass, and he sat and waited for that sucker for about 5 seconds downfield. It probably should have been a 70-yard touchdown, but that's sort of the sad state of affairs of the Miami Dolphins, is that even when something goes sort of well, a 50-yard play, it's still kind of a laughable 50-yard play. Not a ton of takeaways here from this game. If you are, as David meant, I got you in a sec. If you are interested in your survivor stuff, that you're in a big pool or you're just in a small pool with your buddies, we posted that survivor video last night. The Bills are going to be pretty popular from a survivor perspective. So I would like to hold on to the Buffalo Bills in my survivor pools. I think there are some alternative options that you can easily go to. And if the Bills are going to be, exceptionally popular in your particular survivor pool, I would rather lean away from them. That's my personal take. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. I would like to hold them for as long as I can, using them in spots that become more important down the stretch, spots where other people don't have the Bills left. That's a team that I would really like to hold on to, because as we'll get to, there's some other teams that I think are in really, really good spots for this week. Should be a decent bounce back spot for Keon and Shakir and Josh Palmer and certainly Josh Allen, but the game script is going to be interesting to see tonight. If the Dolphins can punch back at all, we're set for a huge Josh Allen game, I think. But if they can't, we might be running it back with another huge James Cook week. There we go. See, this is part of my concern. This game, not to turn this into an entirely survivor, but I think it's relevant. Dorito says, in my large pool, the Seahawks pick percentage has passed the Buffalo pick percentage. That's like the concern. And I want to, I talked about this in the Survivor video, so I won't like rehash it for everybody that listened to it. My goal for this week is I want to be able to pick the Seahawks. I think a lot of people are going to end up like in Doritos pool, like how I'm thinking about it is like Seattle's like feels just as good as Buffalo does, almost, right? Buffalo is essentially a lock to win in our minds. But Seattle feels similar. And I don't know that I'm going to want to use Seattle as strongly as I'm going to want to use Buffalo later in the season. So I can just use Seattle now. And I can convince myself that it's maybe a little bit more contrarian. I'm not sure that's going to end up being the case. How I'm playing it is I'm going to fade the Bills and then see what happens, right? Obviously, not just see what happens in this game. If the Bills are popular and lose, great. If the Bills are less chalky, less popular than I thought they would be after tonight's game, well, now that means exactly what we're seeing here, that Seattle ends up being really popular on Sunday. So now I can pivot off of Seattle onto, Jaden Daniels might not play. Justin Fields is not going to play. So like you can do things like take the Bucs against Tyrod Taylor. There's alternative options on the week, in my opinion, that are still very strong that we can like, okay, let's pivot off the Bills. Okay, the Bills, shoot, they weren't quite as popular as I thought they were going to be. Okay, that if that's true in your pool, it's going to be Seattle. I had someone text me this morning, as a matter of fact, a friend. What about Survivor? I think I like Seattle better than Buffalo. And I was like, I also like Seattle better than Buffalo, but I think we all like Seattle better than Buffalo. So if we're all thinking the same thing about Seattle, I think they are going to end up just being popular. So if that means you just decide you want to take Buffalo, go for it. That's certainly not in larger pools how I think I would play it. But something to monitor is what the Bills ownership in your Survivor poll is going to be. David says, do you have a Discord link to Spike Week? I really enjoy the Survivor show. First of all, thank you for watching the Survivor show. I enjoyed doing the Survivor show. It's been a ton of fun with Rob and myself every single week. There's a link in the description of this video to the Discord. It is, for anyone that is not a part of the Discord, it is 100% free to join, though it's really just the channels that are not behind the paywall are kind of like, you can get updates on the content. You can get support. You can see when we are going live on YouTube, or when podcasts are posted, when articles are posted, all that kind of stuff in the Discord. If you want to come hang out and join the conversation, it is just $5 a month. And there's a link to get access to that in the Discord, or in the description of this video as well. Shuby says, I have real American dollars on the Dolphins tonight. God bless you. You don't have to gamble on every game, Shubes. You know that, right? You can just, even if you think it's a good spot for the Dolphins, for your mental health, you can just let's just do something else. Let's just do something else. There's college football tonight, right? Yeah. Bet on Rice or Charlotte. At least you're going to enjoy that sweat a little bit more. Who wants to watch Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, the corpse of Mike McDaniel walking up and down the sideline against the Bills on a short week? Save yourself the stress, even if you think it's monetarily a good decision. All right, let's move on to the Sunday slate. I want to frame it a little bit through. We'll bounce back and forth, but frame it a little bit through the DFS side of things. I'm actually excited to start with this game because Colts versus Titans is both a fun real life game, in my opinion, which is not something I thought that I would be saying. In Daniel Jones, I'm not the biggest Cam Ward guy that's out there. So after 2 weeks, the Colts are one of the more fascinating cases to think about, and also going to be a huge part of this DFS slate, and probably a huge part of any fantasy league. Do I just start Daniel Jones over, right? There's probably a real question. Do you start Daniel Jones or Jalen Hurts this week? Right? Those are genuinely real questions in the year of our Lord 2025 in week 3 that we have to ask ourselves. Thank you. I'll get that fixed for you guys. Actually, let me just post a link in the I'll post a link here in the chat shortly. But let me got me rattled. I didn't know that was, but thank you for letting me know, Dominique. I'll fix that. Daniel Jones, right? Renaissance through 2 games. I was not so much of a believer after week 1 because Daniel Jones, right? I think the most logical scenario, even after a good game against that terrible Miami Dolphins thing, was, it's a lot more of the Dolphins. I will say I was impressed in week 2 against the Broncos. The probability that Daniel Jones has sort of bounced back in Indy is much higher, in my opinion, now after that week 2 game against the Denver Broncos. I'm still stubbornly not ready to and I actually think that this is correct, even if it is stubborn. I'm not ready to just, bend over backwards to praise Daniel Jones. I don't think I thought, honestly, in week 2 watching, Jonathan Taylor was absolutely epic, and the Broncos defense made several poor mistakes, kind of uncharacteristic mistakes of a defense of that quality. So what does all that mean? I think it does mean that the Colts are a good football team, a reasonably good football team. They're going to contend for the playoffs given the state of their division. It's a little more like they're going to show up and be a battering ram for someone, right? They're just going to get kicked to the curb in the playoffs pretty quickly. But from our perspective, fantasy football, Colts Titans this week is one of the more appealing games. The total is only 43 and a half, but that has a lot to do, I think, with the Titans side of things. But if you think about the Titans in they're like the inverse of the Colts, where the Colts got off to a really hot start against the Dolphins, but it's the Dolphins. Then they did have a good game in week 2 against a good defense in the Broncos. It's definitely possible, as Bree said, that the Broncos are a little bit overrated. I'm very willing for that to be a part of the equation. I'm absolutely interested in seeing how the Broncos defense plays out, because everyone was ready to crown them one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I do think they played well against this Titans team in week 1, but they did not play well against the Colts in week 2. So what does that mean, right? Both of these teams have played the Broncos. One shredded them, one struggled with them. But we go to Tennessee. The Colts go on the road now, right? 2 home games for the Colts. Now we go on the road to Tennessee, divisional matchup. And the Titans are in for a little bit of, bounce backs don't only happen after week 1. Bounce backs can happen in week 3 or week 4 or week 5, or, these things, if nothing is linear, there's no rules on when these things have to happen. I think this is a pretty good spot for the Tennessee Titans. I think it's been very disappointing if you had Calvin Ridley through 2 games, right? If you have rostered Calvin Ridley, if you drafted Calvin Ridley in best ball, you're not feeling very good about that. He's 5,100. Yeah. So 5,100 on DraftKings and has not cleared 8.7 points in 2 games. But again, what we can say about the Broncos is I feel very confident that Patrick Surtain is good. I feel very confident that Patrick Surtain is good. I'm not so sure that the defense is quite as good as we thought, but he took Calvin Ridley out of the game. He also took Michael Pittman out of the game in week 2. And neither of these teams have those form of a shutdown corner. However, do we really want to be playing into ownership of this magnitude with Colts and Titans? Tony Pollard projecting as one of the highest owned running backs. Tyler Warren projecting as one of the highest owned tight ends. Jonathan Taylor projecting reasonably well, but then the pass game is a little bit lighter owned. The pass game meaning the wide receivers. This game, I'm simultaneously happy and sad that we're talking about it first, because it has me in a little bit of a pretzel. We'll talk about Cowboys and stuff later, some of the higher owned teams and stacks and all that kind of stuff. I think this game has the potential to be the worst tournament play of the slate, where we've overrated the Colts. The Titans really are just bad. Cam Ward is bad, right? The kind of coming together of, oh shoot, this Colts bubble is about to pop, and oh shoot, the Titans really are who they are, and we get this like pretty gross divisional matchup in Tennessee outdoors, right, where it's not super appealing. It's spread out. Calvin Ridley isn't earning a ton of targets. Io Manor is getting his, but Chig is getting his, and then we're running Tony Pollard into the back of his offensive lineman for 20 plays again. Jonathan Taylor is having more of a week 1 performance than a week 2 performance because the Titans run defense. There's like all these levels of concern, but I also think there's an absolute ton of upside, especially given the prices. $5,100 Cam Ward, Calvin Ridley, $4,900 Cam Ward, by the way, $5,400 Daniel Jones. There's a lot to like about this game from a tournament perspective. Josh Downs, we'll see if he is healthy. It seems like he will be fine, though I cannot believe I'm more interested in Michael Pittman. But if you think the Titans play with a lead, that's going to be good for Josh Downs. Tyler Warren is going to be one of the higher owned tight ends of the week, and I think it's earned, and I have absolutely no problem playing Tyler Warren even at this current ownership. He's a baller. He's a top 5 tight end in fantasy. So this one is going to be a doozy. This one reeks to me of if we show up on Sunday and nobody's playing Daniel, right? Here's something I'll try and do on some of these games is put together some form of a, right? If nobody's playing Daniel Jones teams, I also like the Cam Ward side of this, by the way. You could think about what you could do here. Let's just for an example, Daniel Jones plus Pittman, and let's do Warren, right? Daniel Jones plus Pittman and Warren is something you could do. And then you have these very clear and easy. If Tony Pollard is popular and Jonathan Taylor is popular, well, what if they pass and I can get Ridley and Io Manor? Now I have all this money. I mean, truly insane amount of money. Can I even spend this much money? Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson. We'll talk about Jordan Mason, right? If I play Jordan Mason, I have too much money left. Do you want to fade Jordan Mason? I don't know. Then, do you want to swap some things around, take out Io Manor take out Io Manor and move some things around? You can see how a game stack of this game can get nutty and really allow you to get a bunch of superstars around it, allow you to get whatever defense you want around it. And if this Daniel Jones stuff is real, and if the Titans do bounce back, there's just an absolute ton of upside in this game. So as it stands right now, one of my favorite tournament stacks from a DFS perspective. And I do think, in your managed leagues, whatever, start these guys. I would be starting these guys. I would continue to start Calvin Ridley. If you're really on the fence about, a final flex play or a wide receiver play, I do like Io Manor as a punt down here, 3,700 on DraftKings. He makes for a good play. The Colts pass catchers, I think you can just play it. Tony Pollard is probably going to do nothing again, but we are talking about a cheap Tony Pollard getting all of the touches in this backfield. I mean, the targets are severely lacking. You have to think that they did see that and maybe change it, but I think that's a little bit of a Cam Ward issue. Not so much. I think Cam Ward wants to hold the ball and run around and throw the ball downfield, and he's not checking it down to Tony Pollard. So a concern, but nonetheless still too cheap, and just a ton of appealing options in this game. And it's another one, like I said, where I need to see Sunday. We got to flip over these cards, and if nobody is playing anything, nobody's playing. I also think you could do skip the Colts pass catchers. You could just do the Cam Ward side of things, and then spend up on a. You could do Warren as just straight Tyler Warren as your bring back. And now you could do something with that Jordan Mason, right? You could do something with the Jordan Mason, and now you can have some expensive, just about any wide receiver that you want, basically. I think you could technically get any wide receiver that you want. Yeah, you could technically get any wide receiver that you want, right? This looks pretty good to me. This looks like a really appealing tournament team to me. So this game offers a ton of upside, but I want to check the ownership that we get on this. Do you think there's any signal with Steichen not trusting Danny to throw on the final drive? I thought it was really weird. That is a great question, and I would say I'm not going to call it signal, but I'm trying to find something. I don't know what the right answer is. Shout out to our boy Ben Gretsch, who nails it. You need to be subscribed to Stealing Signals. He does an awesome job every single week, but he breaks down what's signal and what is noise. And the problem is there's also something in between there. That I know that's not, he's saying he talks about how a lot of the stuff, there's a lot of in between in there. So it has nothing to do with stealing signals. But I'm trying to I started like, I want to put a pin in that thing because it's like, I don't know if it's signal and I don't know if it's noise, but I'm not sure that it's nothing, right? I just don't know in which direction that I'm supposed to go with it. I think it's a sign that they don't, I think it's fair to take away that like, they're just not like, it's not like, oh, wheels up. This is so, well, we talked about this in Spike Week. We have a lab in the Discord every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where it's just a Zoom call, right? Where premium members, we all hang out. We talk about mistakes we made in our best ball process. We talk DFS plays and second quarter drafts and whatever. How I classified, how I'm viewing this Daniel Jones thing right now, just how I'm viewing it is like more so Carolina Panthers Sam Darnold than Minnesota Vikings Sam Darnold. And I don't even mean that as a knock, actually. Sam Darnold came out swinging that year. If you recall, through 4 weeks, Sam Darnold led the NFL in rushing touchdowns when he was the Carolina Panthers quarterback. It feels a little bit like from a fantasy sense, Daniel Jones looks really good because he's got 3 rushing touchdowns, right? They sneak with Daniel Jones at the 1-yard line. That's the Jonathan Taylor concern, is he's going to get vultured at the 1-yard line way too many times. But the passing from Daniel Jones has just been okay. It hasn't been awesome. So I think I'm not like rushing to trust Daniel Jones to be slinging it all around the field on the road, divisional matchup just yet. So that's, and that what Shuby brought up is sort of like that's something, right? We're jotting that down in the notebook as like, yeah, that makes me a little bit squeamish about this whole Daniel Jones experiment. Aaron says Daniel Jones just shows us how bad Anthony Richardson is. Ain't that the damn truth? Good Lord. I am totally with you. And Bree says I'm playing Daniel Jones and Colts stacks, especially against bad teams. I do think that's potential. Something that could be a signal is the Colts are front run, right? They're good enough to beat these really shitty teams, but they're not so good to that we want to be like stacking up. Now, they just did that to the Broncos. So what does that mean? Like you said, maybe that means the Broncos are overrated. The Broncos are not that good. But the Colts are definitely not some flawless stack you can play against anyone, I don't think. But it's really intriguing. One of the more intriguing situations to start a season that I can remember. This whole Colts start. All right, what's up next? First of all, there's a question. Trade away Lamar, Ken Walker, and Ibuka for Jaden Daniels, Neighbors, and Tyrone Tracy. I love Malik Neighbors, but I think I would hold the Lamar side of things. Jaden Daniels is hurt. I don't really want to be. So I just don't want to be trading for an injured Jaden Daniels and Tyrone Tracy at this moment. As much as I love Malik Neighbors, for me personally, I prefer the Lamar side of things. I understand the Ken Walker split is frustrating, but I think it's possible he's useful still, regardless, probably useful this week. And Ibuka, I think, will be fine. So just give me the stability of Lamar, the upside of Ibuka, and the upside of Ken Walker. I don't think Tyrone Tracy has that, even though, like I said, Malik Neighbors, that's my dude. I love Neighbors a ton. Let's see. Falcons-Panthers, another intriguing game. I wanted to point out the Falcons and how insane this Falcons team has been. If we go to defensive EPA, so something I like to use. This is NFL Elo. It's great. It's a really awesome tool. It helps you get a quick gauge for how teams are performing. It's not right data like EPA and success rate and pass rate over expected and all that different kind of stuff is awesome to look at what is happening in these games. It does not necessarily mean that is always what's going to continue on into the future, but I like to view it just to get a general gauge of performance, right? It's like, this is what happened, and we can describe what has happened through some of these metrics. The Falcons defense. So from an EPA perspective, you want it to be the lowest number possible, right? As far negative, because that's every play, how many points are you adding to your opponent's team from an EPA perspective? That aforementioned Seahawks defense here, probably good for Ken Walker that the Seahawks are playing defense at an elite level. But also the Atlanta Falcons through 2 games have been the best defense in the NFL from an EPA per play perspective. That's crazy. that is one of my biggest takeaways through 2 weeks. I think that the matchups were good, not like show-stoppingly good. They didn't shut down, or excuse me, the Bears didn't shut down the Vikings to that extent. They did for a half to that extent. And then the week 1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they really, now the Bucs, right? No Tristan Wirfs, no Chris Godwin, whatever. So, okay, they slowed them down a little bit. But the Bucs were moving the ball better against the Houston Texans than they were against the Atlanta Falcons. They hit a few big plays. Baker hit a few touchdowns. The Ibuka touchdowns really made us feel better about that game, but they shut down Bucky. They shut down Evans. I don't know. AJ Terrell is out this week, their best corner on the Falcons. So that's something that's maybe beneficial for Teteroa McMillan in this one. But I'm pretty, aren't you worried about this game? Aren't you worried about the Carolina Panthers? Yeah, I am. And as you see here, ownership is also falling in line from a DFS perspective. These are DraftKings projections. Bijan is certainly one of the best plays of the slate. It's just hard to imagine a scenario in which Carolina shoots this thing out, given what we saw from the Falcons defense, given what we've seen from the Falcons offense in that week 2 game, where they just went completely into a shell, rode Bijan Robinson and rode Tyler Algier, and turned the Vikings, what used to be a good Vikings run defense, into a bloody pulp by the end of it. And they just bludgeoned them. And I'm not saying that, and something can't happen here with the Panthers bouncing back. Again, AJ Terrell out is helpful for T-Mac. I just think even Drake London at 6,000 is a nice price on DraftKings, but I still think this is probably just a Bijan game. I will also say in home leagues, if you're a 0 running back bro like me in your managed leagues, I'm starting Algier this week in multiple spots. Not saying that that's like a great thing, that's not a celebration by me by any stretch of the imagination, but I am saying I think the Falcons might be pretty solid, and I think the defense is pretty solid, and I think the Panthers have proven, other than in garbage time catch-up mode against the Cardinals defense last week, I think this is going to be a tough scene for the Panthers. I think you can play. What's the ownership for the Falcons defense? So $3,200 Falcons defense, which might be one of the better ones in the league. I'm not saying that it is. It's only 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. But I would be interested in finding out if the Falcons defense is one of the best in the league. So we'll see. I'll be interested to see how that settles. I think it's mostly just a Bijan and potentially Falcons defense for me here. I would rather not start any Panthers in my home leagues. There's not much that I particularly love here. What is the Panthers -5, or excuse me, Falcons -5.5. I'm not a huge fan. I do like. I'm still very much into some unders. The Falcons unders are interesting if their defense is awesome and they're going to run the ball like crazy. Even though they're scoring, as we stand here, I have not put the betting blueprint out just yet. That will be out. The betting blueprint and the DFS and drafts blueprint on the site for subscribers on spikeweek.com. You get access to these blueprints every single week, and I've not put those out yet. The rankings for Underdog Battle Royale drafts are out, but it's possible that this Panthers Falcons under makes its way into the blueprint, of which, by the way, we crushed it last week. Absolute monster week in the betting blueprint. I haven't even gone back and actually fully calculated that up. Let's take a quick gander before we move on here. This is something that you can get access to every single week. You saw, so we were up 4.5 units in week 1, and then the props specifically just and you can see you'll get a write up for every single bet that gets made out there. But it was pretty fun. We were on. Sorry, Bill. I'm excited for Bill the rest of the way, but we were on the Bill under against that elite Packers defense. That came through. Kayshon Boutte over receiving yards did not come through, but the Troy Franklin ladder, gotta love a good ladder hit. Troy Franklin ladder hits. Pearsall, Metcalf, Keon, Swift, Gainwell, Travion, everybody was getting home for us. the Franklin ladders were a crush, as Josh said. That was a big hit in week 2, and all this will be out later today for week 3. Let's get to Raiders and Commanders. The market doesn't really know what to do here, I don't think, because we don't know about Jaden Daniels. It's feeling more and more each day that Jaden Daniels is not going to play. I don't have any conviction about any injury news on a Thursday unless it's been announced that someone is out. I'm not going to pretend. I kind of wait till Fridays and wait till the weekend to get better information on the injuries. There's no real need to rush to it, but just sitting the Commanders as a 3-point favorite at home is sort of indicating they're no Jaden Daniels, but also sort of indicating we don't want to get buried in either direction. So let's just call it a field goal and move on. I think that this is would have been a pretty nice spot for the likes of Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, and it is okay for Bill. However, what I will say is if we go over to our trusty EPA per play stuff, if you're excited about Jacory Krosky-Merritt this week, I would caution your attacking of the Raiders' run defense. It is only 2 weeks, and they played the Patriots, who maybe just can't run the ball, and the Chargers, who I don't know, maybe the Chargers can't run the ball either. But through 2 weeks, no one has been as dominant. I mean, they are lapping the field in from a run defense perspective. No one is running on them through 2 weeks with the Raiders defense, and so I think, as you see here, they've been one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL, bottom 10 or so. They're similar to how the Giants have played and the Lions have played, et cetera, from a pass defense perspective, but they've been the best run defense in the NFL just through 2 games. But if we're going to take a look at how these teams are performing and we're going to evaluate the skill players and stuff through 2 games, we should also look at the defense through 2 games. And I think they are one that if folks are going to be interested in playing Bill, I think it makes a ton of sense. Now, they're not, right? No, but especially on DraftKings, nobody's particularly interested in Bill, but I thought it set up for what could have potentially been a fun little passing game stack here. Terry McLaurin got a ton of targets in week 2, but it was the Green Bay Packers and got absolutely shut down, like everybody has gotten shut down with the Green Bay Packers. Debo's been off to a pretty solid start, but if we're not getting Jaden Daniels, Zach Ertz has been off to a good start as well. You have a Brock Bowers potential bounce back at a reasonable price. Jacoby Myers getting double-digit targets every single game, apparently 12 and 10 in his 2 games. It's if Jaden Daniels doesn't play, probably just mostly a pass on this game for me, though I think Geno is intriguing down here at 5,200. I think I just like some other cheap quarterbacks better. But I don't think that game is absolutely crazy to play. But again, Jaden Daniels is going to be a big part of that. The Falcons may run the ball a ton, but seems like the ultimate pass game Falcons leverage spot if the Panthers can push them at all. It is. It's just the leverage stuff is very fun. And it's just how is it the best? It can be a leverage play and not be the best tournament play. You know what I mean? And trying to balance the fact of people are going to play Bijan, so I can play Penix and London in also a good spot. Though I don't think it matters for London. They're moving him around the formation a ton, and that's pretty awesome. Kyle Pitts has looked a little bit better through 2 games. Led them in targets last week, by the way. Kyle Pitts did. And Darnell Mooney is back. So I do think there's very clear upside for them. I think J.C. Horn has done a really good job taking Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison out of the game. The Carolina Panthers corner has done a pretty darn good job on those 2 guys through 2 weeks. So it's just like there's some other spots that I think we really like. We just talked about Colts Titans. If the Colts Titans ownership is just as low as this game, we'll talk, about a chalkier Cowboys game. There's actually like a lot that I think makes sense in tournaments that I'm still going back and forth. It is just Thursday. Catch me on Sunday. Talk to me this weekend. Hit me up in the Discord if you want. If you have any questions, maybe that opinion will change. But as of right now, I'm still leaning a little bit more towards, if I'm playing the Falcons, eating some of that Bijan chalk, despite, like you said, the potential leverage on that. As Cody says, it's just bad. The Panthers stuff is bad. It's bleak. The defense is definitely bad, but the offense is not good enough. They've been down 20-3 at halftime in both games, which is kind of funny. But the offense is not good enough to really, like, if the Falcons defense is even anywhere remotely as good as what we've seen through 2 games, I just don't see the path to the Panthers, like, really ever, not just pushing them, but making them ever feel stressed, right? It's like, even if the Panthers score a couple times, are the Falcons going to feel stressed enough to go, okay, let's stop handing it to Bijan. Let's give it to, let's put the ball in Penix and Lennon's hands. Enough, not just some, but enough to win us tournaments. I think that's the problem. I think it could be a good Penix London game. Does it turn into like the shootout where Penix throws 40 times for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns? That seems like, I'm admittedly more of like a smaller field player and stuff, and I don't have to nail that exact type of an outcome. It's one of those, I see it, but I just don't know if it's probable enough for me to lean into it. Are you dropping Tracy for Tootin on waivers? Yes, I would be. Best ball on call is a Panthers fan and says all true about the Panthers. I apologize to Panthers fans, not because I'm sorry, but because I feel bad for you. It doesn't look good. Keep the light on for, I guess, when Jalen Coker comes back. We need Jalen Coker to be the Lord and Savior of this team. Talked about Raiders, Commanders, Packers, Browns. Here's a quick one. No. There's a quick. What do you think about the Packers pass game? What do you think about just, these are 2 of the very best defenses in the entire NFL. And the Packers, if I lose to the run-heavy Packers and the Browns against the Browns passing game, or Judkins or whatever against the best defense in the NFL, like, so be it. The Browns actually did a pretty good job against the Ravens. The Browns shut down the Bengals completely. And then the Browns actually did a really good job. Now, their run defense is completely dominant. The pass defense is not quite as good, but the pass defense is still solid. I do think there is some pass funnel-y stuff to the Browns defense, but I think it's like the run defense is elite and the pass defense is good. I think the defense is just awesome for the Cleveland Browns. Is there more opportunity without Jaden Reed? Yeah, T says he's laddering Matthew Golden. I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable because Matthew Golden can get home on just one play. If we look at, hold on, let me clear this out. If we look at air yards, so first of all, if you haven't seen the Malik Neighbors air yards, absolutely hilarious. 385 air yards through. He has 100 more air yards than third place, which is Tyquan Thornton, by the way, third in the NFL in air yards. But if we look at Green Bay, Dobbs and Wicks, but then Matthew Golden was actually third in air yards. And to have 91 air yards on just 4 targets, right? He's getting deep shots and then a couple manufactured touches. He probably should have had a touchdown from Jordan Love in this last game. I do think it consolidates around these 3 guys, plus, of course, Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft, third on the team in air yards, getting end zone targets, but so is Romeo Dobbs. I think there's a lot of appeal overall to this passing game, generally speaking, without Jaden Reed. I think you can ultimately play Harold Fannin every single week. It's like there's not that many tight ends getting as many targets as Harold Fannin is. There are so many early games. This has me all rattled here trying to find them on the schedule. Tucker Kraft 4,700 is going to be popular amongst the tight ends. This is sort of my concern. I think Josh Jacobs projects a little over-owned here against this awesome run defense. A little over-owned, a lot over-owned, in my opinion, against this awesome Browns run defense. But I do think you can play $3,600 Fannin just about any week. It's not ideal against a Packers defense, but I think honestly, like if he's going to play this much, they're going to throw this much because they're going to be losing so much that he's ultimately playable. If he ever gets in the end zone, it's going to be a good game from Fannin. This, however, is just one of the like. You saw the difference between even from Bengals to Ravens was a big downgrade from a matchup perspective. And we saw like he was good. The hype, the hype was like, okay, let's not crown the guy the new Brock Bowers, Trey McBride just yet. And now the matchup's going to be even worse in week 3, even though they're at home. So I think like from a large tournament perspective, yeah. I don't think there's ever anything wrong with Fannin until his price adjusts to where it probably should be. But this is just one of those spots that's a little bit trickier for sure from Fannin. No Judkins, no. I don't feel the need to get super duper crazy on this slate. Maybe that's just me. Maybe other people would say differently. But there's so many good plays that I don't need to play guys against the best defenses in the NFL. It's sort of how I'm approaching this slate. Glad we can make that one a little bit quicker because God knows we spent enough time on fucking Daniel Jones and the Tennessee Titans. Here's a doozy. Bengals, Vikings. The game that is going to generate more conversation than any other 41.5 total game ever has. Minnesota Vikings at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, both quarterbacks are out for this game, and Aaron Jones is out for this game. I understand why someone might say, man, Jordan Mason's going to be really popular in DFS. First of all, if you have Jordan Mason in your home leagues and start him. That no question. This is the Cincinnati Bengals. That defense is bad. You saw what Etienne and Tootin just did to them. How are they looking from a rush defense perspective? They are some middling. Bengals have been a middling run defense because they were quite good actually in week 1 against the Browns, which is kind of scary for the Browns run game. But I just think there's not a lot of reason to overthink the Jordan Mason thing. KOC, of course, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, even came out and said, like, Jordan Mason is a workhorse. We have no concerns about Jordan Mason being a workhorse. He's going to play on passing downs. He's going to catch some passes. It's technically possible that Carson Wentz is an upgrade to this offense, right? And they score more points at home against a Bengals defense. But even with Carson Wentz, are they really going to just like go balls to the wall, slinging it all around the field? That seems unlikely. So all roads just really point to Jordan Mason in this game. On the flip side, Jake Browning did look competent. He did look competent in his, half or so of play in the Bengals game. But against the Minnesota Vikings and that pressure defense behind that offensive line, I know that Wentz is 4K, but Jake Browning isn't even the min. So they put in some price boosters for old Jake Browning, which they don't tend to do on so many of these. But nonetheless, I'm mostly just Xing out the Bengals. I think Chase Brown is in big trouble without Joe Burrow, and of course his ownership and projection and everything has come down from a wide receiver perspective. I do think you can play Justin Jefferson, but I also do think there's a lot of good wide receivers on this slate. We talked about those Titans and the Colts that are there at also low ownership. I don't think those Packers wide receivers are crazy, even though they're not my priority on this slate. I don't think that the T-Mac and the London calls from earlier are crazy. So it is going to be a little bit difficult to fit Justin Jefferson as much as I love him as a player. And same thing with Jamar Chase. There are just better spots on this slate. If you got him in your home leagues, like tough shit. This is what we paid for. I have in one of my dynasty leagues, I have JJ and Chase, which I thought was incredible, right? My 3 wide receivers are Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and George Pickens. And I thought this was going to be like, I have Ashton Genty on that team. I thought this was going to be an awesome year. Turns out, maybe not so much. maybe not so much with those two guys. But this game is going to be, like I said, talked a lot about because of the quarterback situation and because of Aaron Jones. But ultimately, I think if there's a priority, it is strictly Jordan Mason for me, understanding he's going to be very popular. That just informs how we build teams around him. That doesn't mean that you can't play him. I will say that TJ Hawkinson, shout out to, again, the folks in the Spike Week Discord citing some Carson Wentz stats. Historically, one of the highest target rates to tight ends among quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. I think that that's an acceptable enough thing to throw some darts at TJ Hawkinson. I'm not planting my flag that because Carson Wentz targeted Zach Ertz many moons ago on the Philadelphia Eagles, that means he's going to target TJ Hawkinson on his first game with the Minnesota Vikings. But it's interesting nonetheless, and I think it's reasonable that Hawkinson can have a bounce back spot against a Bengals defense that has historically also been very bad against tight ends. So more of like a tournament dart for me, because I don't think this game is particularly appealing, but I can understand why people would be super interested in TJ Hawkinson. Tougher to play him over like a Tyler Warren for me and over some of the spend up guys, but he is only 3,800 on DraftKings. Caitlin Clark MVP, that's phenomenal. Shout out to Caitlin Clark putting in some Bryson McMillan stacks. I just think it's so hard for Bryce Young to be a tournament winning quarterback in DFS. Last week with like 59 pass attempts. Is that what it was? 59. It was a lot. I know that. Let me go to Bryce here. Bryce Young. Filibuster. Good Lord, what's his price down to? 5K. He threw 55 pass attempts, and we got, 26 fantasy points is great, but we can't be having all this, like, eventually, right? Like in week 1, the garbage time doesn't lead to production. You need to operate efficient offenses, not just be a high volume passer and dinking and dunking because the other team's in a prevent defense for the whole second half. It's just tough for me to see. Now, AJ Terrell is out, and so it does make T-Mac a little bit more fun, I think, but it's really hard for me to get to Bryce. Given what the Falcons have done on defense through 2 weeks. Maybe that's overcorrecting for 2 weeks of Atlanta Falcons. We shall see. But if the Panthers were the Colts, right? If the Panthers were someone that showed me any signs of life, and this isn't just like a 2 weeks stuff. Coming into this season, if you looked at the Carolina Panthers roster, they traded away Adam Thielen. Jalen Coker was hurt. Chuba is fine. T-Mac is I think T-Mac is good and going to be good, but you can't like build a really good, efficient NFL offense around just T-Mac targets. Xavier Legette is absolutely terrible. Xavier Legette, through 2 games, has 15 targets. 15 targets. And talk about who it's over. You know who it's over for? Is Xavier Legette. 15 targets and 8 receiving yards. 8. How the hell does a first-round NFL draft pick with no other target competition in 2 games where they're losing 20-3 at halftime in both games? They've been down 23 to halftime in both games. Xavier Legette turns 15 targets into 8 yards in 2 games. He's backsliding. He looks worse than he did last year with more opportunity. So maybe he's just not that guy. And it's really hard to build an NFL offense that can win us these top-heavy, crazy DFS tournaments when you just can't operate at any form of efficiency. And that's sort of what the Carolina Panthers are. Right now, the offensive line is hurt, as was mentioned before. It's kind of just all bad. It's kind of just all bad for the Panthers right about now. Rams, Eagles. If we could never talk about the Eagles all season until they just eventually get to the playoffs and hopefully turn it on, I would be you could sign me up for that. The Eagles have 264, I believe, total air yards in 2 games as an offense. As an NFL offense, through 2 games, The reigning Super Bowl champs have 264 total air yards. In 2 games, Malik Neighbors has 385 air yards. One player on the New York Giants has 385 air yards in 2 games. One player on the Dallas Cowboys has 303 air yards. And Tyquan Thornton has the same amount of air yards. Tyquan Thornton on 9 targets has the same amount of air yards as Jalen Hurts has attempted to all of his receivers in two games. They've won. They're good. They're a good football team. But they do this thing, and they did this thing last year, where they essentially just coast through the regular season, don't play with any aggression, let teams hang around, right? Play with their food, if you will. The aforementioned Carolina Panthers almost beat them last year. They were almost upset multiple times. The Commanders almost beat them in the regular season, or did beat them in the regular season. They let these teams hang around in the regular season because they have no interest in opening up the playbook, throwing the ball downfield, being aggressive. They don't throw the ball over the middle unless it's a check down. They just play essentially like, we're better than these teams. We're not going to open this thing up. Now, could that change against the Rams? The Rams do have a good defense. So number one concern, let's start with the concerns, is that I do think the Rams have a good defense. Through 2 games, 4th in EPA per play. Now, they played the Texans, who I don't know if you watch Monday Night Football. That's not a very good offense. And the Titans, who that might not be a very good offense either. So it's possible that the Rams defense is a little bit inflated here. Can the Rams offense, which on the flip side of things is solid, is in the top 10, right? Is like operating like the Chargers or something like that, has been really solid. The pass game in particular has been really solid. Puka is a superstar. Devontae Adams still cooking at whatever. I assume all of fantasy football thinks Devontae is about 55 years old, the way he's been spoken about for years. Can the Rams score enough points to push the Eagles' offense? I'm unsure. I do think that the Rams are going to score. I think this is the first test the Eagles are going to get. I think the Cowboys just about gave them that test, but did some CD drops, a Miles Sanders fumble, right? We didn't get the full experience in week 1, and we were really close. And then the Chiefs just unfortunately are not good enough right now with their lack of receiving talent to truly push the Eagles. I think the Rams might be. If they can keep Matthew Stafford upright with Puka, with Devontae, I think that they can score some points on this Eagles team. I don't think this Eagles defense is quite as good as last year, particularly in the secondary. So what does that mean? I think the Rams are super intriguing here. I think Puka is just that dude, and Puka will get home every single week. The problem from a DFS perspective here is people are seeing this. People are seeing, AJ Brown's down to 6,300. Devontae Smith's down to 5,300. Puka is that guy. Devontae Adams is 6,200. Makes for an appealing enough additional piece to this game. Jalen Hurts is only 6,800. And so we need to get updates on Will Shipley. Something that happened with Saquon Barkley that I thought was notable is a couple of targets in week 2 and 5 targets in week 1 without Will Shipley. Can we get a little elevated passing usage for Saquon Barkley? I mean, 7 targets in 2 games is good for him, is good for the Eagles. And so can we get a little elevated passing usage for Saquon Barkley? Does he present himself as you want to talk about a leverage play? If people are playing the age that all we have to do is say, well, the Eagles aren't going to pass because they haven't passed and they don't have any interest in passing, but people are going to play their passing game and people are going to play CMC and people are going to play Bijan. I can play that Saquon guy, right, as sort of leverage off of everybody in this type of a spot. And I don't know that I want necessarily a ton of this game overall, but I can see it with the Eagles passing game. But also, what if they just continue to operate as exactly what we know them to be and what they want to be. That's probably the most likely thing, but that's not what's the most likely thing amongst ownership here. No, thank you on Kyren Williams for me. You can start him in your home leagues, and I think he'll be fine. But I don't think that Kyren is something we should be super excited about from a DFS perspective. I don't know that the Blake Corum stuff was real in terms of like stealing a bunch of work. But if you go take a quick look, Blake Corum, 5 carries, 44 yards, and a goal line touchdown. It was when the game was not over, because it wasn't over, but it was like, second half. Are they kind of letting Corum go a little bit? He caught the hot hand, but that's just something that never has happened really to Kyren before. So if he's going to have the potential to lose any work, that's not ideal for Kyren Williams. You can build some pretty killer, right? Hurts stacks. Let's just say you want to. I think you could do something as crazy is not the right word, right? But like play the double Rams bring back without Stafford. Because if you get Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns, but they do also pass some more, Jalen Hurts is just going to outscore Matthew Stafford. And again, this one is not bad. This is something where you could use the Jordan Mason, right? You can use Jordan Mason. Can you still fit like a Bijan in here? Probably. So it's a little, we've got to go down at defense. We got to go down at tight end a little bit here if we build something out with this game. But you see you also can get away from Bijan, right? You can do some different things, but you also don't have to play. You don't have to play AJ Brown. You could play Devontae Smith as his stack. You don't have to play both of the Rams guys. You could save a little bit here, right? That can help you afford the other positions, but you can see why it's appealing with the pricing, with what it allows you to do from a roster construction perspective. You can see why it's appealing, but like that's great. The theory of what it will allow you to do is awesome, but are the Eagles ever actually going to come out of their shell? That seems unlikely to me. Rams stacks with Stafford, my favorite DFS play on DK on an underdog, feels like a 3 to 4 passing touchdown game. I got no problem with that. I tend to play Rams without Stafford even still in DFS. I can't remember a time when Matthew Stafford put up a game that I ever cared about. Because he's not going to run. He's probably going to run for negative yards, and he's not going to have any rushing touchdowns. So he just has to get you better get 303 doesn't even fully do it. You need the fourth one probably. 303 is good. You're certainly not upset. But if you go look at the QB pricing on the slate, that's the tricky part for Matthew Stafford is he is not any cheaper than any of these other guys. Yeah, thank you. Exactly. Sean nailed it. It's hard to play Stafford with so many cheap quarterbacks. So Stafford is 5,700. Here's the quarterbacks more expensive than him. 5,800 Bo Nix, 5,900 Dak Prescott, 6,100 Kyler, 6,200 Herbert, 6,300. Right. So these guys are all within $600 or so. Jalen Hurts is 1,000 more. Jalen Hurts is 1,000 more in the same game. Michael Penix, same price. Caleb Williams, 5,600 against those Cowboys that we'll talk about in a little bit. Jake Browning, no thank you. CJ Stroud, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Drake May, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, Cam Ward, right? These guys are all cheaper than him. So that's the hard part. Is not that I don't think Stafford has a solid game. It's that it's very difficult for him to separate at the quarterback position. He's more of a put up a good score, right? Fingers crossed, put up a good score. And, obviously hope that I have Puka and Devontae. He throws it to Puka and Devontae, though Davis Allen apparently is going to score a touchdown every single week for the Rams. It's just a little tricky to play Stafford. I really like Puka and Devontae this week, but I struggle a little bit with Stafford generally, but that's most weeks. And it could also be a little bit of an Erik bias. Steelers, Patriots. So here's my take on both of these teams. I played a bunch of Patriots last week. It was okay. Drake May was good. That was about it. Ramondre was obviously solid. The Patriots right now do set up to have a pass funnel defense. But are the Steelers a team that I ever care to take advantage of pass funnel defense? I don't know if you've seen DK Metcalf. Here's Let's look at DK Metcalf. One of my favorite DK Metcalf stats is let's look at Metcalf's career, and let's look at his average depth of target, right? How far downfield is DK Metcalf being targeted on average? Where the hell am I missing this? Where the hell is this at? Why is it not showing up on here? Anyway, not important. DK Metcalf, his ADOT this year is all the way down here next to Connor Hayward. The Pittsburgh Steelers are using DK Metcalf as a glorified Wan'Dale Robinson has a bigger role down the field than DK Metcalf does. He's playing a lot of snaps. He's getting some targets. He has 73 air yards on 13 targets in 2 games. Tyquan Thornton has 284 air yards on 9 targets in 2 games. This role for DK Metcalf, theoretically, this should be a decent DK Metcalf spot against this Patriots defense that has really struggled to defend the pass and been pretty good against the run, right? There's your sort of pass funnel. But DK Metcalf is not being used in a way that he can take advantage of this. Maybe he's just not good enough. Maybe Arthur Smith doesn't care. Maybe Aaron Rodgers doesn't care. They're spreading this around. Look at all these guys that have gotten targets on it. No one has more than 13 targets. There's a 10, 2, 1, 1, 7, 13, right? 1, 6, 9, 10. It's just so spread out here. Jaylen Warren's going to get some more work in the passing game, supposedly. That's what Aaron Rodgers wants, a little more Jaylen Warren. It's a split backfield in New England. It's a split backfield in Pittsburgh. The game is going to be so slow. These teams play slow. Aaron Rodgers plays slow. Arthur Smith plays slow. They're going to run the ball. There's just other games I like better than Steelers and Patriots. So one of those could maybe be Jets Bucks up next. 2 more early games. 9 early games, 4 afternoon games. Come on, NFL. Come on, man. This is obscene. We can't keep doing this. 9, 10 games in the early window. Just move 1 or 2 to the afternoon. Don't we want people watching the afternoon games too? I don't get it. Jets Bucks, no Justin Fields in this one. So the Bucks, speaking of the survivor thing, if the Seahawks become super chalky in your survivor pools and you don't want to take the Bills, like me, you understand that the Bills might be under-owned or whatever, but that doesn't offset the fact that you would like to hold the Bills for later. I think the Bucks are one of those teams that we can pivot to. Just quickly, if we scroll down to Seattle here, right? Seattle is a 7-point favorite and Tampa is a 7-point favorite. So the betting markets are saying these guys have the same chance of, are they both minus 115? Yeah. -7, minus 115. The betting markets are saying these guys have the exact same odds of winning this football game. That's what we're saying. Do you believe that? Do you agree with that? Are the Jets better than the Saints? Up for debate. But I think the Bucks become this sort of survivor pivot if the Seahawks take over ownership, like Dorito was mentioning in his survivor pool. He already is seeing that the Seahawks are going to be more popular than the Bills. I kind of tend to think that's going to be the case as well. The Bills are not going to be without ownership, of course, but then there's only so much ownership to go around. If we get a decent chunk on the Bills and then a whole bunch of people piling on the Seahawks, there's only so many left that can pick the Bucks. The Bucks also represent a team that I think is like, I don't know how many times I'm really going to want to use them. So against Tyrod Taylor and the Jets at home, I think that it's a pretty good spot for the Tampa Bay Bucks. The problem is I'm not so sure that it's a great spot for the Tampa Bay Bucks or anyone in this game from a DFS perspective. I think the Bucks pass defense can certainly be vulnerable. I will say the Bucky Irving role is outstanding. Bucky is, let's go over to the rushing side of things. Bucky is playing at a close to, if not certainly a workhorse role. You're seeing 73% of snaps for Bucky Irving. He's got 31 carries compared to just 12 for Rachaad White. Sean Tucker has just 1. So he's dominating the backfield. Touches, these are just rushes, right? Rachaad White did get over here at my one of my favorite sites, Add More Fun. So you see the money zone right inside the 10-yard line. So we have the red zone and then the money zone. Rachaad White has gotten more looks down there, and that was really just this past game, right? If you saw, Rachaad kind of got hot on a drive, which is hard to believe Rachaad White got hot, but he did. He looked good. He had a couple of good runs, and they sort of, rewarded him, if you will, with the goal line carry. Bucky got a goal line, is still playing some at the goal line. He's catching passes. I'm a little bit worried about the Bucs offense with Tristan Wirfs injured, right? Superstar left tackle Tristan Wirfs is hurt. But I think Bucky is a modern day. I like to keep saying modern day workhorse running back instead of, like, when we say things like workhorse running back, I think we mean very different things a lot of the times. People think it's like, oh, so he's Christian McCaffrey. He's playing every single snap. And like, no, like a modern, if you get above 70%, that's like a modern day workhorse, which is actually where Christian McCaffrey is, in the 70% range, between 70 and 80. And that's where Bucky is as well. So if they can control this game, grind it out on the ground with Bucky, a little bit of Rachaad, because Tyrod Taylor isn't necessarily pushing them, I think it's a pretty good spot for Bucky. The field does agree, projecting somewhere around 20%. So at that ownership, I'm not sure that he's some mega priority. This game's not super sexy, but I do think Bucky probably in line for a pretty good game. Ibuka is hurt with his groin, whatever he's got going on, groin injury. He was getting wrapped up and didn't look awesome. I don't know that I want to play him against the Jets in that situation. Mike Evans is almost certainly going to draw the Sauce Gardner coverage, which was has been a nightmare for opposing defenders or opposing receivers through 2 weeks. I don't know that I really want to play anybody in the kind of a gross game where they may not be forced to pass with Sauce covering him. It's kind of a little bit of a Bucky or a stay away for me. I understand the perks of Garrett Wilson. His target share and everything is monstrous, and this is not a bad spot. But like you kind of see, like the Bucs happen to play the Texans this week, so it's top of mind. You see what happens with even superstar wide receivers, and I'm not sure Garrett Wilson can be put into the Nico Collins category of wide receiver. Well, let's just put him in there for fun. When there's no one else on the offense, it is so incredibly hard not to have a good game. Garrett Wilson had a good week 1, and Nico has had Nico had a good sort of week 2. It's so hard to put up a score that you just can't find somewhere else when the offense has no one else to go to besides you. And that sounds counterintuitive because you would say, well, he's going to get all the targets, right? We do that all summer. It's like, well, who else? The case for DK Metcalf was, well, who else are they going to throw to? And the answer is, I don't know, but it will be someone else. For the Jets, the actual answer is, no, they're not really throwing to anyone else. They're throwing to Garrett Wilson. But that's the problem, because you can't operate a functional NFL passing game with bad quarterback play. Like, no offense to Tyrod. He's not, Josh Allen back there, and no one else threatening the defense. And that's the problem with the Texans. Bad offensive line. CJ Stroud's not playing at a super high level. And Justin Watson and Xavier Hutchinson and Dalton Schultz and Nick Chubb don't threaten opposing defenses. So there needs to be enough juice on it, right? When people are like, well, now this is target competition, right? Ibuka has target competition. It's like, that's fine. If they're going to score points and move the football, that's good. I need some level of target competition because I need some level of competency in the offense. And that's the Nico Collins problem right now. Exactly. Gets all the targets equals gets all the coverage. You need something else out there helping the offense. And that's my concern with Garrett Wilson. So I think he's going to be a little bit tough to play in the short term. And I thought he was a good play last week, and I feel very foolish about that. That is for sure. Texans, Jags. Speaking of those Texans, I do think it's a potential bounce back spot for Nico Collins on the road against the Jaguars. I can't believe the Texans, the win this division every year team are underdogs on the road. Granted, on the road, but they've been really poor, really poor to start this season. What I will say is the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is just okay. Bottom third of the league, I think I would classify the Jaguars defense as. They have been especially bad against the run, however, thus far, and good against the pass. I'm not certain that that's sticky, and just citing the numbers that have been. And I will also say that the Houston Texans still do have a very good defense, despite being put in all these really bad spots and a pretty tough right? A couple pretty tough matchups, the Rams and the Bucks. They're still operating as, a top 10 or so defense. I think the Texans defense is still pretty gnarly. I'm not rushing to play anyone against the Houston Texans defense. That has not really failed me in 2 years. I know Ladd did it in the playoffs, but I'm not sure that I would classify this Jacksonville Jaguars offense in its current state with the Brian Thomas Jr. having a wrist injury, right? I'm not sure that I would classify this as a spot that I'm super excited to try to attack this Texans defense. And Nico's going to draw some ownership, but maybe not enough. I just do have those concerns. I think theoretically, this is the bounce back spot for Nico Collins. Theoretically. But the Tampa Bay Bucks were not some pass defense that we've been targeting the Bucks pass defense for a while, and he couldn't really get it done. Now, it wasn't totally his fault, right? He almost scored a second touchdown. He could have scored. He is the focal point of the passing offense. He is a superstar. So I think that he can get home here against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But again, I think if the field is going to ignore those systemic concerns about the Houston Texans, it's reasonable to say I might still like some other guys amongst the top of wide receiver. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think it's absolutely obscene. Really, either tight end in this game. Brenton Strange hasn't gotten it done, but if the Texans defense is solid and getting pressure on Trevor Lawrence, maybe we finally get a Brenton Strange game. And I hate it. I hate it so much, but a total stone cold punt, Dalton Schultz is not the absolute worst thing I've ever played in my entire life. I don't even know that I believe. I don't even think I believe this. Yeah, exactly. I know you're not vouching for Schultz. I don't even think I really believe this. But if the Texans are going to bounce back, if they're going to score some points, it can't only be one individual player, right? If the thesis is the Texans are in a bounce back spot, then they're in a bounce back spot, and all these guys running all these routes are, catch a touchdown, sure. So like I said, I don't even think I really believe it, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention a cheap tight end. Let's get to some more fun games. Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Excuse me. I just see I'm rattled from even speaking about Dalton Schultz. It's like I forgot it. Right. Let's start on the Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars again, because instant MIB flashy thingy to my own brain when Dalton Schultz comes up in the conversation. Then those aforementioned Denver Broncos, and are they or aren't they good? Barely squeaking out a win in week 1 against the Titans. I was pretty bullish on the Broncos this year. Barely squeak out a win against the Titans at home in week 1. Get upset by the Indianapolis Colts in week 2, granted in Indianapolis, losing on they score to take the lead. The Colts drive down and get kind of stopped and have to kick a 61 yarder, I believe. The Colts had to attempt a 61 yarder as time expired to try to win the game. Naturally, they don't have Brandon Aubrey, so they miss. But the Broncos get the old roughing the snapper penalty, right? You cannot run over the long snapper. They have the rules protect the long snapper because he can't pay attention. He has to snap the football. And they get a 15-yard penalty. The Colts re-kick and they win the football game. It hasn't been great for the Denver Broncos thus far. I'm not sure that this is the bounce back spot. If we believe that the Chargers are going to continue to, again, from a pass rate, let's look at pass rate over expected. Just so from an overall pass rate, look at this, 50%. The Eagles have passed on 50% of their plays. Just absolutely obscene. Oh, here we go. I don't know how I was missing it. So the Chargers have a 65% pass rate, right? Which is up there. It's actually not near the highest in the league. The Dolphins have a 75% pass rate. The Chiefs have a 74% pass rate, right? You see a lot of these losing teams with high pass rates, but it's expected, right? The Panthers pass rate is basically what we would expect. They are not passing over expectation at all, but they're just down, right? When you get down 20-3 at halftime of every single game, you're expected to throw the ball 70+% of the time. What's interesting is the teams who like maybe are winning, like the Chargers, but they're passing over what we expect them to pass, which means they're going to, theoretically, if this continues, they're going to pass a lot no matter the game script. Now, right, they're still only pass 65% of the time, but that is a lot more than the expectation, right? We should expect them, based on how their games have gone, to only pass about 50% of the time, but they're passing 65. That's crazy. So if we combine that with this Broncos stuff that we talked about, is the Broncos defense what we thought about before the season started? Is it what we've seen through 2 games? Which, to be fair to them, in week 1, the Broncos defense was solid. They shut down the Titans. But is the Broncos defense what we saw last week? And the Chargers are going to throw like this? Maybe we shouldn't be getting off of the Los Angeles Chargers. It is funny to me that Keenan Allen, he's 4,700, so it's not that funny. This is why. Keenan Allen is 4,700, so he's going to be popular, it appears, on DraftKings. I'm not sure that I can feasibly play $4,700 Keenan Allen against the Denver Broncos at 19% ownership. He's had 2 good games. You're not losing tournaments because you didn't play $4,700 Keenan Allen and his 17 fantasy points. Even if you get the 17 fantasy points, or like he's averaging 18 or whatever, 18. Let's say you get his average, you get 18. You're not like, it's over, I just won everything. Certainly not at 19%. Those are just the kinds of guys that when they draw ownership, I don't really want to play into. I would rather pivot elsewhere and say, maybe Keenan doesn't score a touchdown this week. Maybe Ladd does, right? Maybe Ladd scores a touchdown. Or if we're going to chase 2 weeks of results, let's chase it with the guy who has the big play upside down the field. We've seen Quentin Johnston score 3 touchdowns in 2 games, including multiple big plays down the field. Nobody wants to play him because he's $700 more than Keenan Allen, but he's also already shown a ceiling higher than Keenan Allen. I would rather play into that, but this game is appealing. The Chargers defense has been very good, so I'm not like super hyped up about the Broncos, but come on. Troy Franklin, we got to talk about Troy Franklin. He's $4,000 on DraftKings. If we don't talk, and projecting for 2.7% ownership. I was a little frustrated when I saw that because part of me wants to come in and say, on the road at the Chargers playing really good defense, particularly really good pass defense. You saw what they just did to Geno Smith. I would probably not want to chase the Franklin game, but what Troy Franklin just did in that game should be discussed. What he just did to the Colts defense. Now, the Colts defense is not something I think we should be excited about. But to come out and dominate a passing game, absolutely dominate, dominate the Broncos passing game, to dominate a game in which 3.18 yards per route run, he had 46 yards of yak. He caught a 42-yard pass. He's catching the ball in traffic. He's working downfield. He's moving into the slot. 58% of his routes were in the slot, 41%, 42% out wide. He's moving all over the place. He's running all the routes. Cortland Sutton did not run all of the routes. If we go back to that game, if I can click this, let's go. We can take a quick look at the Broncos offense, and you can see that we can look at the snaps, right? So they run 59 snaps of total offense. Troy Franklin is the highest snap share player that is not, right, the guys that play every snap, the offensive lineman and the quarterback. Cortland Sutton is at 45. And Troy Franklin is in there for 3 more passing plays than Cortland. Cortland Sutton has historically been like 100%, right? So Bo Nix dropped back to pass 35 times. He ran twice, so I guess, whatever. I don't know if those are sneaks. But amongst 35 pass plays, Cortland Sutton was only out there for 28. Is that real? Is this a real shift in like Troy Franklin kind of starting to become a focal point of the offense? I don't know. Is this a great spot for him to have a big game? Not really. But if the field is going to play him at 2% owned, it seems like a pretty good spot to be like, I don't know, what if this shit is real? What if the Broncos defense really is bad or not as good as we thought? The Chargers continue to throw a ton, and Troy Franklin is a real thing in this offense. That seems like a potential tournament winner. Justin Herbert. Let's go to this game. You can do some stuff. I'm trying to make sure to build a few teams. I've noticed the people like when you build some teams. Let's just use Ladd and QJ instead of Keenan Allen, and Troy Franklin is the bring back. Talk about a stack that also gets you. Let's just, for funsies, plug in some defense. Let's plug in. Who's playing one of these backup quarterbacks? Is it only the expense? Well, the Bengals, but no, thank you. You could do Vegas against Mariota, I guess, but let's plug in a more expensive defense. The Vikings against Jake Browning. So it gives you $6,000. So you do the Vikings and the Jordan Mason thing. Now you can get Bijan and you still have 50, right? This seems good. Nobody's playing this. Look at the ownership in this game. It's on Keenan. A sprinkle of Ladd. No one else. 4% Justin Herbert. 4% Sutton. But Sutton is still double the ownership of Troy Franklin. Nobody's playing QJ. I don't know if the Chargers pass rate continues. I don't know if what we saw this week from the Broncos is real. I don't know if what we saw from Troy Franklin is real. But I know that the field is not interested in that at all. None. Zero. Not playing it. And it's like, I don't know, man. If all that stuff is real, that seems like a pretty good tournament option for me. On to the Saints and the Seahawks. T asks, Abuka or Sutton in redraft rest of the season? I prefer Abuka. I have always preferred Abuka. I think I would just rather have the upside of Abuka. Monitor the injury, right? I just think Cortland Sutton, even at his best, is just like fine. Whereas Abuka is like, we could look back and Abuka is, right, the Ladd McConkey of this year, or the JSN or whatever of this year. I'm not saying that's my prediction. He hasn't quite lived up to that for 2 games, but I think there's the potential that you're just absolutely starting Abuka every week for the rest of however many years that he's on your fantasy teams. Saints and the Seahawks. This one's very easy. The Seahawks have a really good defense. That I feel pretty confident in. I keep going to the EPA tiers. If we go to defensive EPA, we talked about those Falcons at the top of through 2 weeks in terms of the best defenses. You know who's second? The Seattle Seahawks. So another reason why we like Seattle in Survivor, assuming their ownership doesn't run away from us, is that their defense is awesome. I will say, I think we've reached the point where that's not what we want to do. I think we've reached the point where Mr. Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably just playable in DFS tournaments every week, and he's certainly a must start. 10 targets and 13 targets, 21 plus DK points in both weeks. And let's just take a quick look at the through 2 games. Jackson Smith and Jigba. We talked about, let's put the list together of players who have more air yards. Then let's make this a meme. Players who have more air yards than Jalen Hurts and the Eagles do overall. JSN also marks that list, which is crazy because he's been like more of a slot receiver historically. 23 targets in 2 games, 63% of the Seattle Seahawks air yards. Jackson Smith and Jigba. 44% of the team's overall targets. He has not found the end zone just yet, but those are coming, and it's a pretty good spot for that to happen if the Saints can score at all. And I will say the Saints have been plucky. That's the word I'm going to keep using for the New Orleans Saints. They have taken 2 different teams down to the wire. Does it make sense? Is San Francisco with Mac Jones and all their injuries as good as Seattle? No, probably not. Though San Francisco went to Seattle and beat them in week 1. Are the Arizona Cardinals this boring oatmeal, fraudulent 2-0 team? Yes, they are. So this is going to Seattle is going to be a tougher task against this defense for Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints. But they've been plucky through 2 weeks enough that I think we can play Seattle guys and not be like, oh, well, this game's going to be gross. No one's ever going to throw. And even if they don't throw, the Seahawks didn't throw in week 1, and JSN got all of the targets. He's coming in at reasonable ownership, but this is, again, why the Drake Londons are tough. The Garrett Wilsons are tough. Why Nico is a little bit tough. Nico doesn't have the systemic problems that even JSN does. JSN doesn't have the systemic problems that Nico does. It's tough, right? And Nico's going to be more popular because of the brand name and the extended track record of being that dude. But JSN is also probably just that dude. I do think you can take like absolute tournament flyers on a Ken Walker and hope, right? Ken Walker averaged nearly 10 yards per carry last week, and Zach Charbonnet averaged 1 yard per carry last week. I think that split's going to continue for Seattle, but I do think that it would be fair from a tournament perspective to say, what if they go to a little more Ken Walker after he just lit the world on fire? And they're probably going to be playing with a lead. We all like them for Survivor. They're at home. They're touchdown favorites. What if Ken Walker does get a little bit more work this week? Or what if Zach Charbonnet gets a little bit more work this week? I don't think those are crazy. Probably more of large field tournament style plays for me, but I think that's kind of how I'm thinking about this. This is not the spot, in my opinion, for Olave. Juwan Johnson is probably just playable no matter what you do every single week. Certainly in your home league, I think Juwan is playable. We got to at least look at the Juwan stuff. Through 2 games, he's second on the Saints in air yards. Chris Olave still continuing to be a prayer yard god. Now with Spencer Rattler, 219 air yards for Chris Olave, 53% of the Saints air yards to Chris Olave. Juwan Johnson, though, 35% of team air yards as a tight end is pretty insane with 20 targets, 3 red zone targets, 2 end zone targets. He's caught 13 balls amongst all tight ends. Here's where Juwan Johnson ranks in some of those metrics. Snaps, first. Air yards, first. Air yard percentage, first. Total targets, first. Target share, I think he's second. Yeah, but that's just Goddard, who only played the one game, right? End zone targets. See who has the most end zone targets. Oh, yep, Juwan. Let's see who has the. Let's look at ADOT. Okay, that's not really fair because there's a bunch of guys with one target. Who has the most catches amongst tight ends? Oh, Ferg's got him by 1. Basically, every metric across the board from a tight end perspective is Juwan. So, is this the spot I want to play into Juwan? No, but look, again, no one is believing in the DFS world, and probably any fantasy pool world. No one is believing what they're seeing from Juwan Johnson. And I get it. Part of it's the spot. But think about, we're just talking about the Nico Collins stuff. I love Nico, but no one is believing that the Texans are bad enough to drag down Nico Collins to where, not that he's going to have bad games. Of course not. He's a superstar. I love Nico Collins. But no one is this week. This is the Nico bounce back week. That's what everyone's going to say. That's what I said. Right? That's the first thing we all think about. A couple tougher matchups. Now you get the Jags. This should be a good spot for Nico Collins. And that might be true because Nico is that dude. And it probably is a better spot for him than the last 2 weeks. But no one's believing the flaws of the Nico Collins first 2 weeks. And no one is believing that Juwan is that guy, right? These are the kinds of examples where it's like, how much more do we need to see from Juwan Johnson before people buy into it, right? So like, this is why it becomes a little, like, it's easy to say, well, we can just play Fannin while he's cheap, which is something I literally just said an hour ago. But you can also just say, well, like, why don't we just fucking play Juwan Johnson every week? Like, why, until Juwan Johnson is priced where he deserves to be priced, why don't we just play him every week? At 1%? I'm not sure Juwan's actually going to be 1%, to be clear. I don't necessarily, it's Thursday. I don't think all these ownerships are going to hold exactly to what they are. But is the field going to pile on to Juwan Johnson? I find that hard to believe. Tyler Warren, right? We believe the Tyler Warren stuff. Nobody believes the Juwan Johnson stuff. Look at the ownership. Look at tight end ownership. Tucker Kraft, we believe, right? We believe. Tyler Warren, we believe. Jake Ferguson, yep. Trey McBride, of course. David Njoku, we don't believe that he's not that good anymore. We don't believe that he's right. These guys are all Jake Tungus, right? TJ Hawkinson, not being used at all by the Minnesota Vikings through 2 weeks. Insert Carson Wentz. We believe that Carson Wentz is going to give some TJ Hawkinson targets, but no one gives a shit. It's definitely the price. Kai asked with Tungus is $1,000 cheaper, but look at Tucker Kraft. 47. And look, I love Tucker Kraft. I love Tyler Warren. I love Trey McBride. I love Jake Ferguson this week. I love all of these guys. But I'm just saying, this is an example of the field is just like, no, it's fine. I see you. I see you, Juwan, but you're not, like, these other guys are playable despite flaws. You're not playable despite a flaw, which is the matchup that he has. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So Juwan definitely going to be on the list for me. All right, probably the game of the week. Now let's do Cardinals and 49ers because it's boring as shit. I'll say this until the end of time. The Cardinals play the most. If you think the Eagles are boring, wait till I hope to God the Cardinals don't play the Eagles. The Cardinals are so boring. Trey McBride, I feel bad for him. Marv is getting better. I do actually like Marvin Harrison Jr. a good clip this week. And I do like Ricky Pearsall again this week. And of course, Christian McCaffrey, you can always play Christian McCaffrey. I just think the 49ers don't have a lot of like downfield juice. Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall are good football players. Apparently they're not Tyquan Thornton or Wan'Dale Robinson making plays down the field. And the Arizona Cardinals have absolutely zero guys who can make a play down the field. There's no juice in the offense. Their games are really boring. I will probably bet the under here. I bet the under in the Cardinals game, and they let 1 million points get scored in the second half by the Panthers. But the 49ers defense through 2 games has been solid. The Cardinals defense through 2 games has been okay. And you saw, like, if you, I know Christian McCaffrey ended up being like fine, but we've also seen that Christian McCaffrey is just not quite the same old Christian McCaffrey, right? Through 2 games, despite 1 billion touches, 7 targets and 13 carries last week, still just 4.2 yards per carry. He caught a receiving touchdown, which really saved his day to get to 22. But like, remember the old days? If Christian McCaffrey scored a touchdown, we're talking about like 35. Old Christian McCaffrey. And I don't mean it's just his fault, though I don't think he's as good as he was. It's the situation of the 49ers and a little bit older Christian McCaffrey. He still needs to get in the end zone to even like 22.7 against the Saints. This dude needs to get in the end zone to put up a useful score. I think the days of like, you just got to lock Christian McCaffrey because he's going to get all this work it's not true. It's not true. Let's look at let's do it over here. It's a little bit easier. Let's go to running backs. And you can look at the San Francisco snap data. Christian McCaffrey. So we're talking about 77% of snaps. Brian Robinson consuming basically the rest here. I don't know why that's not showing up. But 35 rushes to 15. There's another guy stealing real work in this backfield. Obviously, CMC is getting red zone work and targets and all that. That's why he's really, really valuable. But the days of old school Christian McCaffrey and just like showing, right? We just walked into week 1 and we just said, well, it's Christian McCaffrey. He's going to get every single touch. And then he got a lot of touches in week 1, but it actually wasn't as big of a lion's share of the backfield as it seemed. And that continued into week 2. Brian Robinson is playing. He's a real functional part of this offense in this backfield. And Christian McCaffrey is probably not quite the same Christian McCaffrey. And these 49ers are probably not quite the same 49ers. So while I do like Christian McCaffrey, he's probably going to catch a bunch of passes. Again, he's probably going to put up a good score. Again, he's not, to me, like some must. But he's going to be, as you see here, if we look at ownership, Jordan Mason will definitely be higher owned than him, but he's even projecting higher than Bijan Robinson in week 2. And I'm not sure that he's earned higher ownership than Bijan Robinson. AJ Brown projecting as the 4th highest owned player on the slate is funny. It's funny. Yeah, there you go. Current CMC feels like 76% of old CMC. I agree. Aaron says he's starting Juwan over Kelsey and tight end premium the rest of the season until the usage drastically changes. That's what I would do. That's 100% what I would do. So anyway, in this game, I actually kind of like the not Jake Tunges, but I do like Trey McBride. And dude, $5,700 Trey McBride. It's criminal. It's not like the world's best spot. I know it's not like the world's best game, but it's the world's best price. That's a ridiculous price on Trey McBride. He's too good for that. His target share is too good for that. They don't have anyone else. He is the juice in their offense. It's just a bad price on Trey McBride, in my opinion. So I'm going to continue to keep playing Trey McBride until he catches the touchdown, which may be never. I may never get a touchdown from Trey McBride. That's what I'm learning. Marv is at a good price. People like Marv. It's interesting that the market liked Marv last week, despite like if you kind of looked into it, it's actually not the world's greatest spot for Marv on the outside against the Carolina Panthers. It's actually a little bit better spot this week. Not awesome, but a little bit better spot this week. And the ownership goes back down because, I understand early in the season, things like those sort of hyper specific, functions of NFL defenses are not really going to get factored in. They're really never, the math people would tell you it doesn't matter. And I would say that that's not true. I would say that it's difficult to gauge how much it matters. But when someone's going to be very chalky and there's a potentially bad spot that's not getting factored in, I think that is relevant. And so this is a little bit better spot for Marv. I don't hate him this week. No James Conner, no Jay Benson, no, none of that stuff. So that's the main slate, right? That's the main slate from a DFS perspective. I think if I had to, as we talk it through here, it's pretty wide open. So there's something like, if we look at some of the ownership, I'm just admittedly probably going to be eating the Jordan Mason chalk. I mean, if he wasn't playing the Bengals, if he was playing a spot that wasn't at home against the Bengals, we could have a better conversation about Jordan Mason. I think it's going to be very, like, I don't think the Carson Wentz thing matters really the way JJ McCarthy was playing. I think it's possible that they improve on offense this week. And it's very difficult to get away from Jordan Mason. I do think some of these other guys at the top of ownership are guys you can definitely get away from. CMC, Bijan Robinson, and I like all these guys. Who doesn't? CMC, Bijan Robinson, AJ Brown, Bucky Irving, Tony Pollard, Tucker Kraft, Keenan Allen, Puka Nacua, Tyler Warren. There's no absolute slam dunks here. Oh, we didn't make it through the full game by game. I'm an idiot. This is the game. What are we doing? The game of the week. From a DFS perspective, if this ownership holds, I'm just going to play this game. If this ownership holds, it's Thursday. I'm just going to play this game. I think what we learned in week 2 is a little bit of the inverse of what we learned about the Lions, right? We learned that the Lions might actually still be good on offense because the Packers mowed them down, right? The Packers shut them down at home in Green Bay, and we were like, and then we learned, oh shit, they did it again to the Commanders too. Maybe that Packers defense is just going to shut down a lot of people. I think the Eagles, with their lack of aggression in week 1, we thought it was, the Cowboys are just playing. And I said this last week. The Cowboys were, and they do. The Cowboys are just playing, right? Bend but don't break. Don't give up the big play. Make the Eagles beat you. And I think that is a little bit true, but mostly the fact that the Eagles refuse to really, put any explosive plays into their offense. One downfield play to Devontae Smith, one downfield play to Jahan Dotson in 2 weeks. I think that's more indicative about what the Eagles want to do on offense, regardless of what the opponent that they're playing. And then we saw the New York Giants come out and Russ have 1 billion yards, 500 plus air yards, Malik Neighbors catching 1 million passes down the field, Wan'Dale Robinson catching a 60-yard touchdown, and the Cowboys defense getting shredded. That's the Cowboys defense we thought we were getting after the Micah Parsons trade, maybe even before the Micah Parsons trade. Yes, Caleb hasn't looked very good. Yes, aren't you worried about the Bears? Sure. Rome is definitely not going to fall through the cracks at 5,300, given the start that he has been off to. Let's look super quickly at the Bears, so you can take a look. Rome, 97% of snaps, 42% of team air yards, team leading 20 targets. Olamide Zaccheaus is second amongst the team in targets. Please, God, get Luther Burden out there. This is ridiculous. 3 red zone targets, 3 end zone targets, and 3 touchdowns for Rome Odunze. He's moved around the formation a little bit, primarily on the outside, though. Rome is the wide receiver 1 here, and he's not priced like it. I do think his ownership probably rises. I think he should be popular. My water bottle just splattered all up into my eye. Gross. We're shook. But Rome, it's just a bad price. I think Rome is like a cash game play. If the field is going to let Nico's and all those other guys steal ownership away from CeeDee Lamb and from George Pickens, who you do not see on your screen here, and Dallas passing game, feel like the Cowboys Bears is fragile chalk somewhat. Could see Dallas getting a. Yeah, I just don't think there's a scenario in which the Dallas Cowboys can get up and hold anyone behind. I think this is again, if this ownership holds, this is a scenario for me where it may be chalk, meaning it's not low owned, but it's still not owned enough, right? There can be plays who are not low owned and they're still the best plays on the board because they're not owned enough, right? They're under owned. If CeeDee Lamb is 13% and Nico Collins is whatever percent, I think that's wrong. I think CeeDee is a better asset at not much, as a better fantasy asset in a better game with a better quarterback in a better offensive environment against a bad Bears defense who has got shredded in the second half by a bad Minnesota Vikings offense and then just got absolutely taken to the woodshed by the Detroit Lions. The Cowboys are going to pass. Javonte Williams isn't going to score multiple touchdowns every single game. I know he only had 1 this week, but I do think on the flip side, if Javonte's ownership stays this low, he's a great play. You can play him as your Cowboy, as a bring back, because he's going to catch passes. I just everything about this game, right? Is DeAndre Swift really this popular? Okay, no, thank you. Let's go. Let's do maybe this is the DJ Moore breakout game. There's just so much to like and so many ways to play this game that I just can't really see a scenario in which I get away from it. Not necessarily on every team, but I can't really see a scenario in which I am like out on this game. There's so many ways to play, right? Like, don't play Christian McCaffrey. Don't play Keenan Allen. Don't play AJ Brown. Don't play Bijan. Do something else. And then you can play this game. Again, we'll see what the ownership looks like Saturday, Sunday, how all this stuff goes. Shout out Zeus. Can't always watch live, but thanks for doing these videos. Yeah, just before we wrap, we got Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football to do. Before we wrap, as I mentioned, if you were not here at the very start, the weekly recap videos, I'm going to continue to do those, but I'm going to record those and edit them down a little bit because, as you guys know, and as you guys see here, we're about 2 hours in to 116 game by game breakdown. I'm wordy. I want to get just down to like the major bullet points for each game, and I think that will play a little bit better. It's easy to get lost in tangents after the week is over and thinking about every single little aspect of every single game in an NFL week. And so I'm going to post those as a pre-recorded video pods every single week. And then we'll go live for this game by game breakdown. And then we'll go live tomorrow to do some drafts, right? We'll do some drafts, maybe talk about the slate some more, a little bit more casual during the draft shows. But tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, we'll draft some teams on Underdog and some teams on Drafters. Just super quick, let's recap the slate a little bit. Obviously, Dallas and Chicago, we saved the best for last at the end. But I think ultimately, if I had to like break down this slate, it's really, really wide open with nothing outside of ultimately Jordan Mason that is like some mega standout. So there's no reason you have to play Cowboys Bears. We talked about there's some really sneaky potential tournament, plays. I know there's some people who talked about liking the Falcons passing game. It's not as high on my priority list, but it makes sense. With T-Mac on the other side. Some people talked about the Packers passing game. I think this is not a particularly game I really want to target too much, but without Jaden Reed, is somebody probably going to get home from the Packers passing game? Probably. Right? Can you do the Nico Stroud bounce back? Christian Kirk is back. So can we get a little bit of a shootout here? Can the Jags push back on the Texans? Maybe, right? Is Carson Wentz the savior in Minnesota? We stacking $4,000 Carson Wentz, right? Are the Eagles actually going to throw? And can Puka and Devontae and Stafford push the Eagles to throw? The Colts and Titans game, I think, is an awesome tournament game to target. And then, we talked about that Herbert stuff. What if the Broncos defense is really not that good? And what if the Chargers continue to pass like this? And then, right, a 3-leg parlay. What if Troy Franklin really is that dude? No one's playing that. And you can get whatever you want with that stack. So I'm into that one as well. It seems like a good afternoon slate. It seems like a pretty darn good afternoon slate. All right. Sunday Night Football is, Chiefs Giants. Here's what I'll say about Chiefs Giants. The Chiefs should win, but the Chiefs are in trouble. Shout out to our boy. I will say Xavier Worthy is going to be back. That's not our boy. Jalen Royals back at practice. Worthy also as well. Xavier Worthy should be back, and Jalen Royals should be back. Fingers crossed that we get some Jalen Royals. If we get any Jalen Royals props, of which I would almost guarantee we do not, be on the lookout in the betting blueprint on Spike Week for sorry, dog rattled me, for Jalen Royals props. If we get anything, and he's active, right? He needs to be active but pouncing on some of those, right? Getting on the Troy Franklin stuff before the markets get onto it. Getting on Torrey Horton. Who am I missing? Right? Just these ancillary players that have bigger roles or bigger upsides than like the betting markets are willing to buy into yet. That's been really advantageous for us this far, right? Travion in the receiving game, not so much Travion in any other aspects of the game, but buying some of those. And so we'll be on the lookout for the Chiefs there. I'm just like going to watch this game. I am interested to see the Chiefs have been a little pass funnel-y. The Chiefs, sort of pass funnel. Russ is letting that thing rip, brother. I mean, we talked about the air yards for Malik Neighbors, air yards for Wan'Dale Robinson, air yards for Russell Wilson, over 500. Every time you turned on, every time that game came back from commercial, Giants, Cowboys, it was Russ throwing another moon ball. Some of them were really bad, including an interception that maybe cost them the game. I don't know. But if Russ is going to continue to be this aggressive, I don't want to see Russ go for my Neighbors and Wan'Dale shares. Chiefs backfield is a mess. Scatterboo is taking over in that backfield. I'm not ready to write that one off, but the writing is on the wall for Tyrone Tracy to be, more of mixing in with Cam Scatterboo there. I'm not buying the Wan'Dale Robinson deep shot stuff, but I think Wan'Dale Robinson is a interesting little piece here, and tabling our Tyquan Thornton love with with Worthy and Royals coming back there. This is a must win for the Chiefs. They cannot lose this game to the Giants. They have a brutal schedule coming up, and they're 0-2. So nothing super duper crazy. Check out the injury report and such there. Then the game of the week, Monday Night Football. Come hang out on Mondays if you're watching this and maybe you're free in the evenings, sometime around 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern, depending upon my good friend Rob Coakley's schedule, we have what we call the Best Ball Basement on Monday nights, where we're going to, recap some best ball stuff, but we're also going to lead you into Monday Night Football, talk a little bit about the games that we just saw the day before. That's Monday nights here on this channel. So if you quickly hit that like button, but also hit the subscribe button, you can get notified when we are going live on Mondays, and we will go live leading into Lions Ravens. So I'll leave this one mostly for Monday. But what I will say is the Ravens passing game is probably yet again going to be underappreciated this week. I don't know what that means, but Zay Flowers is an absolute alpha, like truly an absolute alpha. Oh my God. I don't know what that typing is. 84% of snaps, 51% of air yards, 42.5% of the Ravens targets have gone to Zay Flowers. You want to talk about another guy where Zay Flowers was viewed as like this low upside kind of PPR scam? Not this year. He is 225 total air yards on a team that has barely thrown the football because they score so efficiently. 51% of the team air yards, just absolutely dominant stuff from Zay Flowers. As you see from a percentage of team air yards, Zay Flowers is, 7th in the NFL. JSN, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Chris Olave, Calvin Austin. That's so funny. Garrett Wilson and Zay Flowers and Taekwon also. Two of those things are not like the others there. Target share, from a target perspective, Zay Flowers is 2nd in the entire NFL in wide receiver target shares, behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. It is Zay Flowers season. We are living in Zay Flowers season. I also think the Lions are a little bit of a pass funnel defense. Their run defense, right? 2nd, not a little bit of a pass funnel defense. They are a fucking pass funnel defense. So far through 2 weeks, this is also was the case last year for the Lions. So you can be ready in that betting blueprint for probably some Zay Flowers overs and maybe some Lamar passing overs. They are the 2nd best through 2 weeks, right? It's only through 2 weeks. They played the Bears, but they did play the Packers on the road. 2nd best run defense in the NFL, the Detroit Lions. Where do they rank amongst pass defenses? Oh boy. What's that? 7th worst, tied for 6th worst with the Jets. They're up there with some of the bad teams that have given up a lot of receiving yardage. I think it's a Ravens passing game, and that means it's a Zay Flowers game. Lamar's probably going to do the bullshit he did last week. A Tez Walker touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to do something sick again, because DeAndre Hopkins does something sick in every single one of these games. Apparently, he does one or two, has one or two cool plays. But this could be a Bateman bounce back. We'll see about Mark Andrews. I'm not so sure there. And I do think, as we saw in week 2, the Lions offense can still score. This is a tougher matchup than the Bears, of course, but the Lions offense can absolutely still score on anybody except maybe the Packers. And I don't think the Ravens defense is that level yet. So I think we get all sorts of fun shootout stuff going in this game. Wheels up to Zay, wheels up to Amon-Ra, J-Mo. The tight ends maybe not quite as much, but it's probably more of a Gibbs game than a David Montgomery game. This game's going to rock. Exactly. Jackson 5 tuds. 5 tuds coming for Lamar Jackson. This was a ton of fun. I appreciate you guys. If you can hit that like button before you run, if you have something that I didn't cover that you would like to get answered, or you just want to get off your chest, Eric, you're an idiot because XYZ, or Eric, what do you think about this because XYZ, or I think it's going to be a Derrick Henry game, and here's why. You can drop a comment on this video. I will get back to absolutely anyone with any comments, and of course be back tomorrow to do some drafts. Same bat time, same bat channel, 10 a.m. Eastern. We're going to draft some underdog teams. We're going to draft some drafters teams. We're going to try to take down some big buckaroos in week 3, and I think it's a pretty fun one, especially for those draft formats. Appreciate you, Sam. Appreciate everybody hanging out and watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy Thursday night football. Go Bills, I guess. Good Lord, what a game. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there, you can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.